All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Peter Navarro is the former trade czar and senior advisor to President Donald Trump. He's the author of several books, lots of them. The political ones he's written are In Trump Time, a journal of America's plague year, Taking Back Trump's America, Why We Lost the White House and How We'll Win It Back. And his latest is this book, The New MAGA Deal, the Unofficial Deplorables Guide to Donald Trump's 2024 Policy Platform. Peter Navarro, welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast. I appreciate you coming on.
Great to be with you. I'm excited about this book, New MAGA Deal. NewMAGADeal.com is where you can find it, as well as Amazon. It's published by Don Jr.'s publishing house.
Oh, is that who's doing that publishing house?
Yeah. It's a book that I began literally the day after the 2022 debacle, otherwise known as the congressional races. If you remember then, we were supposed to have this big red wave sweep over everything. It did not materialize. I thought that was a very bad omen for the presidential race of 2024. So I looked at the chessboard and decided we needed really to do two things, and that's what I do in the New MAGA Deal book. The first thing is I use it as a positive weapon. Secondly, I use it as a defensive weapon. If we think about the best way to beat the woke princess, Kamala Harris, we have to look at what they're going to do to us. It's like a three-trick pony. It's going to be orange man bad, abortion, and they're going to shamelessly play the race and gender cards like that's why somebody deserves to be president, right? So we know that. Now, we look at our side, we also know this. If you look at the polls, every major salient issue, as they say in the trade, for which voters are going to make their choice, Donald Trump wins with double-digit leads. Trump is preferred to the woke princess, double digits on inflation in the economy. Trump is preferred to the missing in action border czar, Kamala Harris, on the border issue. Digression. Kamala Harris was given one single thing to do in 4 years by Joe Biden: secure the border. She went down there in her pantsuit, stuck her nose up in the air, smelled that stench coming over the Rio Grande and said, not my job. Went back to the West Wing, and 8 million illegals followed her. Murderers, rapists, drug cartels, sex traffickers, Islamic terrorists, Chinese spies, and millions of illiterate illegal aliens pushing, ironically, a major portion of the old Democratic base out of the job market, black, brown, and blue-collar Americans. So we beat the woke princess on the economy. We beat her on the border security, particularly since she was supposed to solve that crisis. We beat the woke princess on foreign policy. I'll tell you, Kamala Harris, what do they call Kamala Harris in communist China? Dessert, right? They're just going to eat her for lunch and then have her for dessert. This weaponization of government, I'm the poster child for this. When I was giving my speech at the Republican National Convention, I said, I went to prison so you won't have to. And what I meant by that is like, hey, look at me. It took all three branches of the government, federal government, controlled by Democrats to put me in prison. Legislative branch, House held me in contempt. Merrick Garland at the executive branch, Department of Justice, prosecuted me. And then an Obama-appointed judge, this guy Ahmed Maida, stripped me of every possible defense, threw me to a woke D.C. jury, found me guilty, and off I went to prison. So I think people in America look at that. They look at what they're doing to Donald Trump. It's pretty obvious that they're weaponizing the justice system to stop him from being president. They're weaponizing the justice system to prevent or discourage people like me from helping Trump out should he win the race. And it's just wrong. And the polling shows that. And then all this woke stuff and DEI and corporations and schools, even at the Pentagon, we went on that. And then, look, I mean, how is it that Democrats like Kamala Harris can support transgender destruction of women's sports, genital mutilization of young boys, and the grooming and indoctrination of our kids in K through 12? How?
Because she's childless.
I mean,
she doesn't get it.
Yeah,
she's a stepmom, but she's never had her own kids.
Woke princess. That's all I can say. And she's cruel. When I was in prison, I think you didn't mention that, but for those watching, I went to prison for 4 months to defend the Constitution. And while I was there, I get probably maybe 25% of the inmates were African American. And these guys, they just hated Kamala Harris because they remember her as the prosecutor in Oakland who would put these young, proud black men behind bars for selling nickel bags and laugh doing it, and then go smoke a bone that night with Gavin Newsom or Willie Brown or whoever it was in California she was partying with. So, look, fight this on policy. So the new MAGA deal has 37 chapters. Covers soup to nuts on the policies. A lot of the people who wrote the chapters, former members of the Trump administration. Rick Cannell does a heck of a job on foreign policy. Russ Vought, OMB director on the fiscal cliff, and so on. But this book, what is beautiful about this book is the other thing about it, the defensive weapon. If you remember what Joe Biden did during the 2022 congressional races, he did that, what I called the red wedding speech in homage to Game of Thrones, right? He had that red background with the Nazi-looking soldiers beside him.
Well, those are U.S. Marines, but I do take your meaning. They did look sort of...
All he did was spend time running MAGA into the ground as extremists. Like, wait a minute. Come with
semi-fascist.
Me 2016, and MAGA distinguished Trump from 16 other Republicans in three basic ways. It's very simple. Strong manufacturing base through things like fair trade, tariffs, buy American, hire American, mainstream, border security for both economic and national security reasons, and an end to the endless wars like Iraq and Afghanistan. So our young men and women, mostly from flyover countries, not a lot of Manhattanites over there in khakis. And that's why America rallied to him, and how he turned the party of Wall Street into the Republican Party of Main Street and working class America. So the new MAGA deal, you can get it at newmagadeal.com. It's Amazon as well. It's really a book I hope people will buy and look at and then use to proselytize in a secular way the gospel of MAGA, to deflect this criticism that we are anything but mainstream.
Let me ask you, you're a man who's been on the left earlier in your life. I remember you when you ran for the U.S. Senate. I thought you were a professor.
House.
What's that?
I ran for Congress.
Oh, you did? Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. I thought you ran for Senate. Anyway, I was working in San Diego at the time and in the news, and I didn't remember that story very well.
Where did you work for there?
KFMB, radio and TV.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Channel 8. Mm-hmm. And I mean,
I ran for mayor. That was the interesting race. And I ran on a growth management platform. The idea there was that if you're going to build the houses, subdivisions, you should build the schools and the roads. I mean, what a radical idea. But KFMB was right there with the corporatists. They didn't like me a whole lot, but that's a whole other story. But interesting.
You know, it was really interesting. Dick Carlson ran for mayor. That wasn't the year that he ran for mayor, was it? No, no. You were later.
I look, this Kamala thing is like a deja vu to me because I ran against Susan Golding, right?
Oh yeah.
You can't make this stuff up. It's like the wife of a convicted money launderer, right?
Right.
It's like he's
Silverman
running for governor, and her husband Dick Silverman gets busted with video trying to launder money to pay for her campaign. I mean, it was hilarious. So she said for mayor, and then boo hoo hoo when I raised the issue, it's terrible. It was the year of the woman. And and Boxer and Golding all got elected that year. It's like, wow, that's not the year I should have run, I guess.
But how does a man...
Kamala, I mean, let's follow this through. It's like Kamala's going to play this gender card, like, vote for me because I'm a woman. And any woman that votes for her because Kamala is a woman, hey, stick your head up and look at the inflation. Look at the border security crisis that's leading to the rape of women. Look at the major cities on all the crime. And do you want your children to be indoctrinated, groomed, and maybe you're trying to get them a scholarship as a young woman playing softball or soccer, and they just got bumped out by a transgender. So this year of the woman stuff, it's like, whoa, I'm a little sensitive that I only lost by a percentage point. Won the primary, lost the general. I mean, it was, and I got outspent about 10-1. Sound familiar?
How did you come to the notice of Donald Trump or vice versa? How is it that a man who had previously been on the left, I don't even know what your current political beliefs are, but that was what you were known for, get into a Trump administration? I
wouldn't say that I was ever on the left.
No, you're not. I mean, I'm talking like a commies. I mean, a liberal.
I was a registered Democrat, right?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, look.
Kamala's a commie.
Here's the thing. Working class America is in my bones. I grew up poor, a single family house out with my mom who made $100 a week. We struggle. I have always had empathy for the working class, and that's why I'm very at home in the Trump administration. But the way that worked, and I think it's a good story to talk about J.D. Vance, because J.D. and I are two sides of the same coin. I never met the man, but we are kin because when I was a professor in UC Irvine, about 2003, I started as an economist, right? I'm starting to see all these people lose jobs. I'm wondering what's going on. And of course, all roads lead to Beijing. And the working theory at the time was that it was just cheap wages. And I did my homework and discovered it was all sorts of other things like currency manipulation, counterfeiting and piracy, state-owned enterprises, massive subsidies. And that's the kind of stuff we cracked down on the Trump administration. But when I was at 30,000 feet looking at the problem and seeing the destruction of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin by Chinese economic aggression, I'm up here saying, no, this isn't good for America. I'm seeing these specks down there. And yeah, of course, one of them was J.D. Vance and others his mother and father, rest of the people in his community. And so his lived experience, he's at the front lines of this all-out assault on America by the Chinese. And I'm up here diagnosing the problem. And we come to the same conclusion, just as Donald Trump did, that we need to protect our manufacturing base. And I wrote a book called The Coming China Wars about it in 2006. The boss read it. And that's how we began our journey to where we are today. And JD, he was my preferred choice for vice president. And the reason is I think he's the best choice to help us win the battleground states where manufacturing in America is most highly valued. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin. It's going to be North Carolina, which got battered pretty well. I think we got a shot at Minnesota because of the iron range there. And JD's the guy who working people will trust. I mean, if you think about this, if JD walks in to a union hall and the head of the union's not there, it's just a rank and file, and Kamala walks in as well, JD gets all the votes, right? They trust him based on his lived experience. They know that he'll support working class America. Kamala, she's from the Californication capital of the world. You know what that's all about. San Diego, it's about as far away from San Francisco as it is. Totally different culture, environment, more conservative. And, Kamala versus, I was looking forward to the debate between Kamala and JD. Now, it'll be between Donald Trump and Kamala, but
now he says he won't do it because he's only going to wait to find out who the nominee will be before he schedules.
Yeah, we have to wait for that. And
yeah.
Here's the point: we beat him on policy, and we can't let him attack us as extremists. It's as simple as that, and that's why.
Good luck with that.
The book. Pen's mightier than the sword. I hope it will be in this case. But make no mistake of it, it's going to be a tough battle simply because we're not fighting her. We're fighting CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, NBC, CBS, CBS, and they're all doing the talking points now.
If the Democrat, they're retconning her record. She's not the border czar. I mean, if that is just.
How can they with a straight face?
I don't know.
Crap. I mean, he said her, it's all there. The clips are there. Come on.
She's never denied being the border czar at all.
At a minimum, Biden said, hey, go down there and help solve the problem.
Yeah.
She didn't do a damn thing.
If she emerges the Democrats' nominee and goes on to win the presidency, I fear that this is pretty much the end of the road for American exceptionalism and America as we've known it. She's a communist. I mean, I've gone past socialism because socialism's end is communism. So let's just be honest. This whole equity stuff and all of these things that sound really nice to people. Oh, you're going to have equal outcomes. As an economist, that's impossible. But if you have somebody then that beguiles the voters with that ridiculous discussion, that talk, and they fall for it, I mean, it's over, right?
Well, that's the perennial problem we face. The corporate media versus folks like you. And what's interesting to me is that people are pretty damn wise, even though they're being fed that trash. They often see the truth. But this going to be a razor thin type election, and we just got to run hard. But look, if you just look, the new MAGA Deal book, just go through every chapter. Every single chapter, if you polled that, we are the majority view on that. So run on that. And this MAGA thing, It's like people just need to understand it's three simple things: strong manufacturing base, border security, and endless wars. That's it. That's it. It's mainstream middle America. The extremists.
That's a big. That's a big ask.
What's here? The extremist over there. It's like the stuff they want to do with this country. It's crazy. Plus, she's an anti-Semite. This whole River the Sea Hamas stuff. And she's trying to back off from that. Oh, I condemn the whatever. Meanwhile, she's ripping Netanyahu a new one. It's like honorary member of the squad, certainly. Good God, will America fall for this? I hope not.
I hope not too. Are you going to be in the if there is another Trump administration, you will be a part of it? Yes.
No, I mean, maybe, who knows? I never think like that. I didn't look for a job in 2016. I was ready to go home then. I'm ready to go home now. I'm Cincinnatus in the plow. My concern is winning the damn election and thinking about that afterwards. Anybody who's thinking about a job in the administration right now ought to get off their ass and start thinking about how to win the race. Are you listening to anybody out there who's thinking about that? Drives me nuts. People sit on their ass too. They'll sit on their ass thinking they're going to get a job in the Trump administration, and they don't even contribute to the win. I remember in 2016, I busted my ass in Trump Tower with an army of folks, and the next day, the RNC comes in, Ryan Trebus and Katie Daly come in. I like Reince now, but back then it wasn't so good. They bring in all their people. They occupy the whole damn war room. It's like, what just happened here? And that's not going to happen this time. President Trump knows the pitfalls of that. But good God, folks, this is going to be a tough race. Let's win it.
Who's going to oversee his personnel decisions?
Let's one step at a time. This is what I learned in prison, 1 hour at a time, right? You got a little less than 100 days to the election. Let's use everyone to get the message out.
What was a typical day in prison for you?
What's that?
Typical day in prison for you these 4 months.
Get up at 5, breakfast at 6, walk around the track a mile before work, then try to get some exercise, lunch, and between all of this, dinner at 4:30. Between all of this, you got constant lockdowns and counts and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, the way you survive and thrive in prison is with routine and through faith and just staying focused. You don't let them dictate your life. I mean, the times they had you locked down, that's when you felt your loss of freedom the most. But most of the time, I was focused on the mission. I was focused on what I was going to do when I got to get out with the new MAGA Deal book, how we were going to get the message out. So that's the way you do it. It's no country for old men. I lost close to 15 pounds and I didn't have a pound to lose. Food so bad, but so what? I mean,
but you could have gone to the FBI or DOJ and then had that meeting with them and said, you guys pound sand, instead of never going to the meeting with the prosecutors and,
Yeah, that's not the way it works. You get a subpoena from Congress. It's Department of Justice policy up to the point where I received that subpoena that you refuse to testify. And once President Trump invoked the privilege, it was not mined away by law. Nobody disputes that. Nobody disputes the fact that I told the J6 committee, hey, go talk to President Trump. I'd be happy to talk to you if he waives the privilege. The problem is they never went to ask for that. Okay? Constitutionally, they violated the principle of accommodation. Right there, my case should be thrown out. That's the way this stuff works. It's a violation of the constitutional separation of powers to even subpoena me. And
why do you think? Why did John Roberts say he wouldn't take it?
Do you think he's going to prosecute himself? The Her tapes, they're not religion. Right. They're not going to prosecute them. It's political. Yes. Every person
that's true.
who put me in prison was a Democrat who was across all three branches of government. That's weaponized justice. And at the RNC speech, it was like, I went to prison, so you won't have to. What I meant by that was like, look, all three branches. Congress held me in contempt. Attorney General prosecuted. A Democrat judge stripped me of defense and led to a guilty verdict, right? We have to control all three branches. That means in November, winning the House, the Senate, and the White House. That's our mission. That's what this book is about. The new MAGA Deal, newmagadeal.com, on Amazon as well. And that's what I'm doing, talking to folks like you, trying to get the word out.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it. Dr. Peter Navarro, who was the Trump advisor on trade in his 45 and presidential number 45 administration. He's hoping, or at least we hope, that he has voice in the presidential 47 administration. You're a firebrand, and you bring a lot of life and smarts to the president's administration. I hope you have more of a role there this time around. Good for you.
Just win, baby. That's what I'm focused on. All right. You take care of yourself.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. To keep the programs you like to listen to, please rate this podcast with a fantastic 5 stars on your Apple Podcast app every time you listen. And give me a great review. Plus, of course, subscribe to the podcast. It makes a difference with the big tech algorithm and the big tech oligarchs, and it makes us easier to find. Please get in touch with me on all the big tech stuff. Yeah, we're still there. Using the names Victoria Taft or the Adult in the Room podcast on MeWe, Parler, Minds, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks to 1ACast for imaging, editing, and production. The fantastic song is Gospel by the March 4th Band of Portland, Oregon. Music for Antifa versus Mike Strickland is Ride or Die by Raps by RC. The Adult in the Room podcast is also a production of Flamingo Road Studios. Remember, head up, heart out, and strive to be the adult in the room. Till next time, mischief managed.